Mark's hands trembled as he stared at the eviction notice. 3 days. He had 3 days before he and his 8-year-old daughter Lily would be homeless. All because of a stupid bet he'd made with his boss, a bet he never thought would spiral so catastrophically out of control. If you're feeling the tension already, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. 6 months earlier, Mark had been desperate for work after his wife's passing left him a single father with mounting medical bills. Stellar Industries seemed like a godsend, decent pay, good benefits, and most importantly, a manager who didn't mind if he occasionally needed to leave early for Lily's school events. Vanessa Chen, the regional director everyone called the She Boss, had a reputation for being brilliant but ruthless. At 35, she'd climbed the corporate ladder with calculated precision, leaving broken careers in her wake. Her sleek black suits and perpetual red lipstick became symbols of authority that made even senior executives nervous. "I don't care about your personal problems," she'd told Mark during his interview. "I care about results. Deliver those, and we'll get along fine." Mark had nodded, grateful for the clarity. He could deliver results. He'd spent 10 years in marketing before his wife got sick, and he was good at his job. What he hadn't counted on was Vanessa's competitive streak. It started innocently enough. The company needed fresh ideas for their struggling household products line. During a brainstorming session, Mark suggested a radical rebranding approach that contradicted Vanessa's conservative strategy. "That's the most ridiculous idea I've heard all year," Vanessa had said, her voice cutting through the conference room. "Our customers want reliability, not innovation." Something in her dismissive tone sparked a rare defiance in Mark. "I bet my approach would outperform yours in market testing." The room fell silent. Nobody challenged Vanessa Chen. Her eyebrow arched as she leaned forward. "Interesting. What are you willing to stake on that bet, Mark?" He should have backed down. Later, he would replay this moment countless times, wishing he'd apologized and retreated. Instead, fueled by months of grief and frustration, he'd said, "If I'm wrong, I'll work unpaid overtime for a month." Vanessa smiled, a predator sensing weakness. "And if you win? A promotion to the creative director position that's opening next quarter." She extended her hand. "Deal. But let's make it more interesting. If you lose, you also give up your annual bonus." Mark hesitated. That bonus was earmarked for Lily's summer camp and catching up on their mortgage. But the creative director role would mean a substantial salary increase, enough to finally get ahead of their debts. "Deal," he said, shaking her hand. The next weeks were a blur of focus groups, design meetings, and market research. Mark poured everything into his campaign, often working until midnight after putting Lily to bed. His concept centered around sustainability and family values, positioning their products as investments in a better future rather than just cleaning supplies. The day of the final presentation arrived. Mark stood before the executive board, confident in his work. His campaign had tested remarkably well with focus groups. Vanessa sat in the corner, her expression unreadable. When the results came in, Mark's campaign had outperformed Vanessa's by a significant margin. The board was impressed, congratulating him on his innovative approach. For a moment, victory felt sweet. Then came the sabotage. While Mark's creative direction shows promise, Vanessa said smoothly, "I should point out that he used company resources without proper authorization and shared confidential information with external focus groups without having them sign our standard NDAs." Mark froze. He'd been so focused on the campaign that he'd skipped some procedural steps, minor oversights that normally would merit a warning at most. But Vanessa had documented everything, building a case that painted him as a security risk. Instead of a promotion, Mark received a formal reprimand. His annual bonus was withheld pending an investigation. Worst of all, he was placed on unpaid leave for 2 weeks, a financial blow he couldn't afford. When he returned to work, his position had been restructured. His new role came with a pay cut and none of the flexibility he needed for Lily. When he protested, Vanessa reminded him coldly that he was lucky to still have a job at all. The months that followed were a slow descent into financial ruin. Without his full salary and bonus, Mark fell behind on bills. He took a second job delivering food at night after Lily went to sleep, but it wasn't enough. Their apartment building changed ownership, and the new landlord raised the rent beyond what Mark could afford. Which led to today, the eviction notice in his trembling hands and Lily asking innocently if they were going on an adventure because Daddy looked like he was about to cry. That evening, after tucking Lily in, Mark sat at their small kitchen table surrounded by past due notices. He'd applied for emergency assistance, but the waiting lists were long. His parents were deceased, and his in-laws lived on a fixed income in another state. He had nowhere to turn. His phone buzzed with a text from his neighbor, Elena, offering to watch Lily the next day. Elena was a retired teacher who had taken a shine to Lily, often helping with homework when Mark worked late. Her kindness was one of the few bright spots in their lives lately. "Thanks, but we might be moving soon," he texted back, unable to admit the truth. Elena called immediately. "What's going on, Mark? And don't give me that everything's fine nonsense." Something about her maternal tone broke through his defenses. The whole story spilled out: the bet, Vanessa's retaliation, the eviction notice. "That's workplace harassment," Elena said firmly. "You need to fight this." "With what? I can barely afford groceries, let alone a lawyer. My nephew works for the state labor board. Let me call him." Mark wanted to refuse, to handle his problems alone as he'd been trying to do since becoming a widower. But Lily's future was at stake. "Okay," he said finally. "Thank you." The next day, Mark arrived at work to find an email requesting his presence in the executive conference room. His heart sank. More bad news. To his surprise, the CEO himself was present, along with the head of human resources and the company's legal counsel. Vanessa sat rigidly at the far end, her usual confidence noticeably diminished. "Mr. Donovan," the CEO began, "some concerning allegations have been brought to our attention regarding your treatment following a marketing campaign competition." Mark's confusion must have shown on his face. "We received an anonymous tip with substantial documentation," the HR director explained. "Including emails where Ms. Chen explicitly discussed using procedural violations as retaliation for being outperformed." Mark glanced at Vanessa, who stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. "We've reviewed your personnel file and the campaign materials," the CEO continued. "Your work was exceptional, and the minor procedural oversights were clearly not security risks. More importantly, Ms. Chen's actions constitute a clear violation of our workplace policies." The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, Mark had been reinstated to his original position with back pay, and his bonus was to be released immediately. The creative director position had been filled, but he would be considered for the next appropriate opening. Vanessa was placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. As Mark left the building, his phone rang. It was Elena's nephew from the labor board. "I was about to call you," the man said. "Someone sent us a comprehensive file on your situation this morning. Anonymous, but extremely detailed. Included internal emails, performance reviews, everything." Mark stopped walking. "I didn't send anything." "I know. But someone did. Someone with access to company servers and enough technical skill to cover their tracks." Later that evening, as Mark helped Lily with her homework, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "The creative director position will open again in 3 months. This time, no bets. Just apply. You deserve it. V." Mark stared at the message in disbelief. Had Vanessa been the anonymous whistleblower? Had she sacrificed her own position to make things right? He never got the chance to ask her directly. Vanessa left Stellar Industries the following week. Rumors circulated that she'd taken a position with a competitor, but Mark suspected the truth was more complicated. 3 months later, Mark became the new creative director. His first major campaign centered on second chances and redemption, featuring real families who had overcome significant challenges. It became the most successful launch in company history. A year after the eviction notice, Mark and Lily moved into a small house with a backyard where Lily could play. Elena came to their housewarming party, bringing a potted plant and a card that simply read, "Growth comes after the storm." As Mark settled into his new life, he often thought about Vanessa and the strange turn their rivalry had taken. He'd learned that success meant nothing if it came at someone else's expense, and that true strength wasn't about winning at all costs, it was about having the courage to make things right. One afternoon, while picking Lily up from school, he spotted a familiar figure in a black suit talking to the principal. Vanessa had changed her signature red lipstick for a softer pink, but her confident posture was unmistakable. "Dad, that's my new art teacher's mom," Lily said, following his gaze. "She's starting a foundation for kids who lost parents. She said I could help design their logo." Mark smiled. Sometimes, the game changes everyone who plays it. Mark stood in the empty parking garage, keys clutched tightly in his hand. It was nearly midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. He'd stayed late finishing a project, desperate to prove his worth after everything that had happened. "Working overtime won't save you, you know." The voice made him jump. Vanessa emerged from between two parked cars, still in her tailored suit despite the late hour. Without her usual entourage of assistants, she seemed smaller somehow, though no less intimidating. "I'm just doing my job," Mark said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She approached slowly, heels clicking against concrete. "Do you know why I targeted you specifically, Mark? Out of all the employees who challenge me? Because I won the bet?" His exhaustion made him bold. "Or because you can't stand being wrong? Because you remind me of myself." She stopped a few feet away. 10 years ago, I was you, talented, principled, putting family first. I had a younger brother to support after our parents died." Mark hadn't known this about her. The revelation momentarily disarmed him. "What happened to him?" he asked. "He's in college now. Engineering major." A flicker of pride crossed her face before disappearing. "But getting him there cost me something. This industry rewards ruthlessness, not compassion. I learned to play the game. By destroying people like me? By testing them." Her eyes locked with his. "This company chews up people who can't defend themselves. I needed to know if you would fight back." Mark laughed bitterly. "So ruining me financially, threatening my daughter's stability, that was all just a test." It was business. But something in her expression wavered. "Until I saw your daughter at the company picnic last weekend. She looks like my brother did at that age. Scared but trying to be brave." The mention of Lily ignited Mark's anger. "Don't you dare talk about my daughter. You have no idea what we've been through." "Actually, I do." Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "Medical bills, mortgage statements, your wife's obituary. I know exactly what you've been through." Mark stared at her, horrified. "You investigated my personal life?" "I investigate everyone I work with. Knowledge is leverage." She held out the folder. "Take it." Reluctantly, he accepted it. Inside was not only his financial information but also a document he didn't recognize, a recommendation for immediate promotion and back pay, signed by Vanessa herself. "What is this?" he asked, confusion replacing anger. "Insurance." She straightened her jacket. "The CEO will receive an identical copy tomorrow morning, along with evidence of several procedural violations I've committed. If anything happens to your position here, that evidence becomes much more detailed." Mark looked up from the papers. You're sabotaging yourself? Why? Vanessa's perfect composure cracked, just slightly. Because I saw myself becoming someone I swore I'd never be. Someone who would hurt a child to win a corporate game. She took a step back. Consider it a draw, Mark. We both get to walk away. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward her car, the click of her heels echoing through the empty garage. Vanessa, he called after her. This doesn't make us even. She paused but didn't turn around. I know. But it's a start. As her car pulled away, Mark stood alone in the garage, the folder heavy in his hands. The game had changed, but he wasn't sure if either of them had truly won. I'm glad you're satisfied with the story. The additional scene between Mark and Vanessa adds an important layer to their dynamic, showing Vanessa's complexity and the beginning of her redemption arc. The parking garage confrontation reveals her motivations while maintaining the tension of their relationship. The complete narrative now offers a more rounded story about workplace rivalry, personal ethics, and how people can change when faced with the real-world consequences of their actions. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about redemption, second chances, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives. Remember, sometimes what seems like the end is just the beginning of something better.